I hope that you are all as excited as I am and as ready as I am for the Spookoplathon, because I have an enormous stack of possible books that I'm going to be talking you through today. If you guys are unaware, I am hosting a readathon for the entirety of October, which is Becca's Spookoplathon. This one is based on an old TBR game that I had called Becca's Bookopoly, which is of course inspired by Monopoly. This one is a Halloween version, and the way that you participate is essentially you print out your own version of this board and you can play along with me and everybody else for the entire month of October. So I will of course link the announcement video down below if you want to get involved, if you've missed it and you want to catch up. It's a readathon that is essentially what you want it to be, so whatever like time commitments you have, you can kind of work the readathon around it because there's only as many prompts and as many commitments as you create for yourself throughout the month. But I'm going to be choosing the roll as you go approach for the Spookoplathon, which essentially means I will be rolling for a prompt, fulfilling the prompt, and then rolling again. Because I am taking that approach, I will not be doing like a Spookoplathon TBR in this video, but I am going to be including my first roll, so the book that I'm going to be starting the month with, and everything else is essentially like this is what I'm going to be picking from. So if I land on a prompt where one of these books fits the prompt, then this is the book that I'm going to be reading, because I participated in the Magical Readathon in September, which was a great time. But if you remember my September TBR, I was really struggling to double up with the Magical Readathon prompts and the books that I actually needed to read in the month, which meant that I didn't get too many, I'm going to be honest, if any, of the books on my September TBR. So a lot of them are going to be rolling over. I will just touch upon them briefly in this video, but I essentially did not get to multitask as well as I had hoped. I did still read a lot, but I wasn't able to dip in between books as like efficiently as I hoped that I was going to be able to. So we have quite a bit that I do still need to read, but the Spookoplathon is going to be my priority. In terms of other commitments I have during October, I'm going to an author sign-in on the 9th for an author whose book is in this stack, so I'm wanting to hopefully read that before the 9th. I'm also going to Egypt, but that is at the very end of the month, so I have ample reading time until then. So the only real issue that I have for October is that we are having some work done on our house in the middle of the month, which in theory should not be a big deal because it's only happening over 3 days, but it is happening in my library, which means I think that I'm going to have to take down my 2 big double paperback shelves, box up all of my books, and put the shelf somewhere while the work happens, which is going to throw a spanner in the works when it comes to things like filming, and especially filming things like Shelve It or Scrap It, where I ideally need access to a lot of my library, and things like the Spookoplathon where like I'm rolling for prompts and I may need to fulfill some of those prompts with books from the shelves that aren't currently accessible. But we'll see what happens with that. It is only 3 days, so hopefully it won't be too disruptive. But without further ado, let's actually talk about the books, shall we? So I have 5 new books that I'm going to be adding to this TBR, and the first one of those is a buddy read that I'm going to be doing with Aaron from Booked and Busy, which is The Ending Fire by Sarah L. Arifi. This has actually arrived. I do have a physical copy, but I have the Goldsboro edition, so it's currently in my stack for my next unboxing. But this one is the 3rd book in an adult fantasy series that is centered around blood and also a rebellion. So there are people with different colored blood in this world. There are red bloods, translucent bloods, and blue bloods. About 20 years before the start of the series, lots of the red-blooded babies were swapped with blue bloods. So the red bloods are the nobility, and they essentially took red-blooded children and put blue ones in their place. Blue are like the working slash lower class. The reason that they did this is so that they could raise the red bloods with the ethos of the blue-blooded citizens. So they would see how wrong like the red bloods are for treating other people that way, and then eventually they would train them to be entered into a series of trials that is used to pick the next leaders of the world, so they could eventually like abolish this hierarchical system. I really love this series. It is one of the, I say this every time I talk about The Final Strife, which is the first book. It is the best new fantasy series that I've read in a really long time. Something that I really loved about the battle drum from as well, which is the sequel, is how much it expanded the world. So I'm really excited to see what the ending fire does for this world, whether it expands it or whether it kind of just naturally wraps everything up and brings it to a close. I'm really excited, and I have a lot of faith in Sarah Elarifi, so hopefully it'll be a good time. The author event that I'm going to on the 9th of October is for Sarah A. Parker, so I'm hoping to read When the Moon Hatched before then. I'm not actually super optimistic that I'm going to be able to do that, but this one, I actually don't know anything about it apart from that it's fantasy romance and that it centers on dragons. That's real bad actually, I've only just realized. It also contains assassins and dragon riders. That's all I really need to know. I've heard some pretty good things about it. I wanted to go to the event because it's not very far away from me. It's in Leeds, and because obviously I'm potentially going to get something signed, it would be great if I knew beforehand if I enjoyed the book before I took the Locked Library edition to be signed by Sarah A. Parker. So this one ideally will be read early on. I also have a book club book, which is of course for the Wheel of Time Along, which is a read along created by Sandra from Got a Thing for Things, where we are reading through the entire Wheel of Time series. I have reserved this book at the library. I need to go pick it up. It should be ready in a couple of days, but that is A New Spring by Robert Jordan. This one is the prequel in the Wheel of Time series, which is of course an epic fantasy series following a classic struggle between the forces of light and dark. In this series, we are following the Dragon Reborn, who is a crucial figure in this battle. He's reincarnated in every age because the overarching theme of the Wheel of Time is that as the ages pass, kind of the same events happen over and over again as this battle between light and dark goes on. So we are following this age's iteration of the Dragon Reborn as he tries to put a stop to the rising darkness for good. So in terms of the prequel, this follows, I'm pretty sure it follows Lan, who is one of my favorite characters of the series, especially like in the early days, and also potentially Moraine, who is one of the Aes Sedai, which are like the sorceresses of the world. I'm also really excited about this one because I've heard really good things about it, and after coming out of like the 4-book Wheel of Time slog, I'm really excited to get into something that's a little bit more compelling. If you guys are following along with the read along, the live show for this one is going to be on my channel. I'm pretty sure that it is going to be on the 13th of October. I also have my Inner Circle Patreon pick to add for the month of October. I am currently 2 months behind, so I'm getting a little bit intimidated, but if you guys are unaware, every member of the Inner Circle tier of my Patreon can recommend a book that is added to this jar, and every month I pull out a book with the intention to read it in the month or couple of months that follows. Let's see what we have. I don't think we have many horrors and thrillers in here, but that is the kind of vibe that I would really love to go for this month. Also something a little bit shorter would be good because I have a couple of thick fantasy romances on here already. So this one is purple, and if I remember correctly, purple are ones that were added in 2023. And this one is, oh, this is Vish's pick, which is Diary of Blood. I'm pretty sure that this is in the stacks actually, which could help me out. Hang on a second, I'm gonna go get it for you guys. You know what, I'm actually going to have to say a very big and enthusiastic thank you to Vish for this one, because Diary of Blood is not only perfect for the season, it's actually pretty short as well, and it is a book from the stacks. I don't think I can count this as a book to read for shelve it or scrap it, especially because this round, spoiler alert, the October round is of course going to be a Spookoplathon round, but it is of course still taking a book out of the stacks, which will reduce the number in the stacks by 1. But this one, as far as I remember, it is a gothic story, I think, and also I hope, because I love gothic, about Dracula's wives. I'm pretty sure it has a sapphic romance in it, although I don't know whether there's enough romance for it to be considered as a fantasy romance, but I'm pretty sure it is about Dracula's brides conspiring against him. While we are here, we might as well briefly cover my other 2 Patreon picks from the last 2 months that I have yet to get to. The first one was the August pick, which was Ash's pick, and that is A Kiss of Iron by Claire Sager. Both of these are fantasy romances. This one in particular is centering around Fae. And then the other one, my September pick, is Katie's pick, which is The Deer and the Dragon by Piper CJ. This one is centering around gods. I'm pretty sure it has like angels and demons as well, and also a Prince of Hell. For the current library books that I have out, they are a revolving door at the minute. I put a hold on them, they come in, I don't read them, I send them back, I put a hold on them, they come in, and on and on and on. But I do have a new book that I have just put on hold at the library. It is available as well, so I should be able to pick it up pretty soon. It is very fitting for the season and it is extremely short. Saying that though, I don't know anything about it, but it is The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Carr. I recently, for the Magical Readathon, picked up a anthology called The Book of Witches, and one of the stories that I really liked in there was by Cassandra Carr, and tons of people in my comments said that if I want to try one of their horror novellas, then The Salt Grows Heavy is the one to go. Now, my library isn't the best stocked library in the world, and I didn't think that they would have one of their books, and then I was of course very pleasantly surprised when I discovered that they did. Based on the synopsis, the very basic gist that I can get of this is that it is a fairy tale-esque story about a mermaid and a doctor. It is only 106 pages, so it is very short, meaning that I very easily should be able to get to it, and hopefully it will also fit for a Spookoplathon prompt. I am a little bit worried though, because fairy tale stories, like modern fairy tales or modern takes on fairy tales told in a fairy tale style, don't often hit with me, so we'll see how this one goes. Also currently out from the library, I have Gold by Raven Kennedy, which is the 5th book in the Plated Prisoner series, which is a fantasy romance take on the King Midas myth. Gotta be honest though, this has to go back to the library on the 4th of October because somebody else has a hold on it, and I don't think I'm gonna be able to get to it until then, so we'll see this again in a couple of months, I think. And once again, we have The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. Still have not read this one, and this one is a historical fantasy that I think is set in medieval Spain, and I also think that this one is actually going to be a pretty decent one for the season. And then for the last handful of things that I did not manage to get through, we have of course The Way of Kings Part 2 by Brandon Sanderson. I'm actually going to put this on a chance card for Spookoplathy. Spookoplathy? What the fuck? I'm going to put this on a chance card for Spookoplathy, which will hopefully increase its chances of actually being read, because while I do really want to read this, it is my least priority on every TBR, which is why I have still yet to get to it. I also did not manage to get to my proof copy of Gorse by Sam K. Horton, which is a historical fantasy set in Cornwall. This one, once again, I think is going to be very atmospheric and autumnal, so even though the release date has passed on this one, I still very much want to read it. And then the last book that I'm going to talk to you guys about before we get into my first Spookoplathon roll is one that I'm currently reading. So I am 118 pages into this at the minute, which is The Diviners by Libba Bray. Also perfect for the season, as this one is like a YA paranormal fantasy series about, as far as I can tell from the 118 pages I've read anyway, is about a group of teenagers with powers that are having to hunt down a serial killer that I don't think is necessarily a human. This one I'm listening to the audiobook of, which is excellent so far, would definitely recommend, but I do think that I'm going to have to put this on pause for a week or so while I listen to A New Spring for the Wheel of Time along. So now that all of those are out of the way, let us get into my very first roll of the Spookoplathon. I am very excited for my first roll of the 2024 Spookoplathon. So like everybody else, I will be starting on go, and roll number 1 will be an 8. And that is Present, so a book that I want to read right now. So I landed on Present, which is essentially a book that I want to read right now. I did think when I landed on this though that there is a different interpretation that you could take that I didn't think of before, which is you could continue a book that you're currently reading, because it is a book that you are currently reading in the present, which I thought was a really cool interpretation. However, that is not the one that I'm going to take. The interpretation that I'm going to take of this is a book that I have to read right now, and I am going to use New Spring by Robert Jordan for this prompt, because I have to start listening to it right at the beginning of the month to be ready for the live show on the 13th. This also means that for my very first video of October, I can get straight into episode 9 of Shelve It or Scrap It. So expect pretty much 2 episodes of Shelve It or Scrap It almost back to back, because that is how I'm going to be filming them. I'm a little bit nervous, I can't lie. Can I stack these? I genuinely am concerned about stacking these. I haven't even attempted to behind me. I've literally just thrown them all into a big pile. So here we have all of the books that I hope that I can get through during the month of October. I am once again not entirely optimistic. There are 10 books physically here with me, as well as 3 more to add. So if I could get through 6 of these, then I would be happy. I would like to get through more, but I feel like 6 is my minimum for me to feel like I've actually made a dent here. I am optimistic that I can read a lot in October. Aside from the couple of things I have going on, I really do not intend to go anywhere. I'm recharging, ready for going to Egypt at the end of October, beginning of November. And also, because it is a readathon month, there are going to be tons of reading sprints. I am going to be kicking off with reading sprints on the 1st of the month, followed up by 1 set of public reading sprints per week from me, as well as an extra set over on Patreon. And then you guys are also going to be getting an extra set of sprints per week hosted by somebody else. So keep an eye out for all of that. I do hope that you guys who are participating in the Spookoplathon are very, very excited. And because of that, down in the comments, let me know what, if you're rolling as you go, let me know what your first roll is and what you're going to be reading for that. And then if you're not, if you've made a TBR, let me know what the first book that you are going to be tackling for the Spookoplathon is down below. And then of course, if you don't feel like you have anything to say, but you would like to let me know that you were here regardless, it's October, guys, leave a pumpkin emoji down in the comments. But aside from that, I do hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. If you head to my description box, you will find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram, and my Patreon if you'd like to join me on any of those. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go when nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.